UFC 299 is finally here. It is mere minutes away from taking place, and I appreciate you guys joining me for the immediate reaction show. This is the show where I record my immediate reaction for every single matchup as it concludes. Then I stitch it together, bundle it up nice and tight, and send it off to you guys as soon as the last fight concludes. I give you guys the odds that cashed as well, so we can see which juicy props and odds ended up hitting, and then also my immediate reactions to the fight, the interview, any little thing that I kind of picked up on during the fight as well. So it's nice and fresh in my mind as soon as I hit record, so I can convey that to you guys as best as possible. This is a big 14 fight card. I cannot wait for these fights to start taking place. So without further ado, let's get right into it. It was a solid first round for Marina Moroz, but ultimately it is a split decision victory for the retired Joanne Wood, as she went out there and did enough in the second and clearly enough in the third round with that beautiful spinning back fist she was able to land, hurting Moroz very badly and clearly putting that round into her favor. I will say this though, it was not looking good for Wood in that last round, as I thought Moroz was doing a better job in terms of asserting her dominance, landing the bigger shots, staying a little bit more active. Unfortunately for her, when she got hit with that big spinning back fist, that was the end of it. One judge actually did end up scoring it in Moroz's favor, but I thought the judge's decision was right here with Wood winning rounds 2 and 3 and sailing off into the sunset with a dub on her record. I believe that now brings it to 9 and 8 in terms of what her UFC record was. She came in as a 5 and 0 prospect off of the Ultimate Fighter, where she lost an exhibition matchup to the eventual champion Rose Namajunas. Good career overall. I remember seeing Joanne Wood fight for Super Fight League, which was one of the first ever Indian MMA promotions that quickly fizzled out. It didn't really turn out to be that great, as MMA has not really developed much in India, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Hopefully in the next 20 years or so we can get there. But she started her career off there, or at least the first couple fights that she had, and then she eventually got to the Ultimate Fighter, got to the UFC, and has managed to sustain a solid run for herself, right? She stayed in the UFC, and that's hard as it is. I think somebody put out a statistic out there that the average UFC career is only 2.2 fights, which is absolutely crazy considering the amount of fighters that they have on the roster and everything that you take into consideration. If you guys remember, Joanne Wood was set to fight for the title before COVID hit. She was actually scheduled to fight Valentina Shevchenko in, I believe it was June of 2020. And then obviously the COVID happens, the fight gets scrapped, and she ends up taking the fight against Jennifer Maia in one of the first return fights from COVID for the UFC. And she ends up coming up short in that matchup. So very unfortunate for her that she never got to fight for the title, showcase that she was UFC level long enough until she's able to hang up the gloves now, and I'm assuming start a family with her recently married, I think within the last few years now, to John Wood, who is the head coach of Syndicate MMA. But, feel good moment. I don't care if you had money on Marina Moroz. You got to feel good for Joanne Calderwood or Joanne Wood to go out there and get her hand raised in her retirement bout, especially with the way she ended up that fight with that third round spinning back fist. But it was ultimately a split decision that gets her the victory. All right, let's check out the odds that cashed her. She came in as the underdog. Wood cashes moneyline plus 195, by decision plus 300, and then the over 2.5 chalky, as most people expected, cashes at minus 260. Happy retirement to Joanne Wood, and that's the first underdog to kick it off for the night. Let's see if CJ Vergara can keep it going next time out. Update: Vergara was unable to keep the underdog streak going here as he falls short to Almabaev via unanimous decision, and we knew it was going to be the wrestling that would be the difference maker, and that's exactly what it ended up being here, as Almabaev showcased solid entries, good finishes, and eventually keeping that top position, landing good shots from on top, unable to secure a finish, which was kind of surprising to me, as I thought the under 2.5 was a solid spot here, but Vergara showcased improved grappling defense and ability to work back to his feet when he's put in bad spots. I was impressed with what I saw from Vergara, but Almabaev showcased that he can still go out there and land takedowns when he needs to. Cardio might be a little bit of a question mark as he starts taking steps up in competition. Seemed like he was starting to slow down late in that matchup, was a little bit susceptible to some shots that Vergara was landing. I'd be interested to see if more guys that are higher ranked are able to kind of stop the takedowns that are coming their way and then put the pressure on with their punches, what that would potentially do to Almabaev. But that is not something that Almabaev had to worry about in this matchup. He was able to go out there and clean sweep the cards here. Let's check out the odds that cashed. Almabaev, big favorite, minus 560 comes through. by decision, plus 200, over 2.5, plus 115. Again, all in all, a solid performance from Almabaev. Let's see him fight somebody ranked next time around, and let's see if Varara gets another shot in the UFC, considering he has missed weight multiple times now. Not a good look, in my opinion, but let's see what the UFC brass decides to do with him. It may not have been as quick as his last two fights, but he still managed to get Josh Parisian out of there in 18 seconds. Robelis Despain has a successful UFC debut, coming through with that, as most people expected, round one, less than 60-second KO over Josh Parisian. Now, you guys know me. I've been talking about it all week. It's very tough to trust a guy that's only 4-0, has been, completely mauling his opponents right off the jump, coming into the UFC against somebody as experienced as Parisian. But then you don't expect a guy like Parisian to go out there and swing wildly and keep his chin up in the air for Robelis to counter it effectively and obviously knock him out there. So Parisian not really giving himself much of a chance to win that fight. Robelis going out there and doing what most people expected him to do. That's how he fights. That's how he's going to get his wins. And whoever ends up fighting him next should definitely learn not to keep their chin wide up in the air so early in a fight and swinging so wildly against a guy like Despain, who does, to his credit, he was stumbling and moving backwards, but still keeping his chin far enough away that he wasn't getting hit, but still throwing his long reach, one of the longest reaches we've ever seen in the octagon, and landing with such power and efficiency. It was a thing of beauty to see. It's unfortunate that he's coming to the UFC at 34, 35 years old, but hopefully they're able to continue to turn him around quickly so that he can try to get some wins under his belt quickly before the age starts catching up with him. I've got to say, I don't think we've ever seen anything like this in the heavyweight division. We've seen the obviously knockout power of guys like Derek Lewis and Sergey Pavlovich, and then obviously the nuclear power that Francis Ngannou brings to the table, but nobody ever built like Despain. Nobody ever, utilizing the awkward striking movements that we've been seeing from him. Obviously, he has a background in Taekwondo and all that, but, it's going to be interesting to see which person is going to finally give him that test and how many heads he can collect on the way to that. So I know I'm going to get shit on for the Parisian pick this week. Again, it's like the Jack Hermanson and Joe Pyfer type of thing. A lot of people are leaning on the shiny new thing that's been going out there and finishing all of his opponents, and kind of neglecting the guy that's kind of been around and paid his dues and has the experience. It's not always going to go the way of the underdog, but at least you're getting underdog odds, and you're not, trying to catch these minus 360, minus 370s on a guy that we know so little about thus far. Regardless, I don't want to take anything away from Despain's victory. It was tremendous. 18 seconds. Nobody does that. I think they said that was the second quickest UFC debut, if I'm not mistaken. So great win for Despain. I look forward to seeing how the UFC matches him up moving forward. Could you imagine seeing him inside the UFC Apex? like his reach is probably half of the octagon, which is absolutely insane. But fun matchups, I'm sure, are coming up for him. And a quick rise to the top is possible as well, considering how guys like Shamil Gadzhi found himself in a UFC main event in his second fight. So maybe we can see something similar for Despain. But great win for Despain there. Good UFC debut, showcasing what he did on the regional scene and bringing it to the UFC. How long can he keep it going? We'll see. Let's quickly check out the odds I cast here. Considering that this was such a quick fight, you would expect some pretty crazy odds. But no, everything was pretty much chalky. Despain moneyline, minus 375. By knockout, plus 270. Round 1, minus 170. Round 1 via KO, minus 165. And the under 1.5 at minus 310. Absolutely crazy numbers there. But Despain goes out there and does what a lot of people expected him to do. Unfortunate for Josh Parisian, who I kind of tweeted this out earlier as well. In his 7 UFC fights, this is the first time he's ever fought in front of a crowd. Insane. It only lasted 18 seconds. Hopefully he's able to cherish that walkout, because it might end up being his last as well. But once again, great win for Despain. I look forward to seeing what's up next for him. After 2 decisions to kick off the card, we now have back-to-back first-round finishes, almost less than 60 seconds for both of them. But Michel Pereira goes out there and finishes Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, a guy who is normally very hard to put away, especially early on in fights. Pereira came on hot and heavy, as we mostly expected him to do, with big kicks to the body, but it was ultimately a punch that hurt Oleksiejczuk to the body and eventually forced him to crumple up, leaving that neck open for Pereira to snatch it up and take home that rear naked choke, putting him out clean, cold. It was absolutely a thing of beauty. Normally, when you see somebody hurt somebody else to the body, they just follow up with more body shots and head shots since the head is now exposed. But Pereira felt like he wanted to put a stamp on it by going out there and getting the submission. I wonder how many people got stuck with their hand in the cookie jar trying to take Pereira by knockout rather than in submission. That's why sometimes the inside of the distance is not the bad way to go about it. I personally believe that Aleksandar would be able to weather the early storm with that continuous forward pressure, landing some body shots of his own and opening up the head of Pereira. But Pereira did not let him get started at all. He was fast, energetic, explosive, and that was going to be his best winning chance, was to get Aleksandar out of there early, something that we normally don't see Aleksandar's opponents do to him, but Pereira was more than capable of doing that. I believe it's a 6-fight winning streak now for Pereira, absolutely rolling right now. The guy continuously said in his post-fight interview that this is the weight class that he should have been at this entire time. At middleweight, he is massive already. He gets to eat what he wants now, and he kind of just doesn't have to kill himself anymore to make 170 pounds. It's going to be interesting to see how he continues to assimilate to this 185-pound division and how he does taking steps up in competition now, especially after that type of performance. You got to believe that he's going to start aiming for that top 10 of the division. All right, let's check out the odds that cash here. Pereira, the slight favorite here, minus 145 cashes by submission plus 500, round 1 plus 460, round 1 submission plus 1200, and then the under 1.5 cashing at plus 145. Let's see if the violence can continue, especially after those two quick finishes. After having to think about each other for almost close to a year now, Philippe Lins and Ion Cutelaba can finally put this chapter behind them. But it was ultimately Philippe Lins who was able to come out on top with a unanimous decision victory, 29-28 on all three scorecards. He showcased a great calf-kicking game to start off the card to slow down Ion Cutelaba. And then from there, he was able to mix in some takedowns, some clinch control up against the cage, and pretty much cruise to a decision after Cutelaba seemed a little bit gun-shy in terms of throwing much of his own striking output. Again, great showing from Lins. I was very happy to cash him as a dog here. I kind of wish I made him my underdog of the week, or the dog of the night, I should say, but I had a little bit more confidence in a different spot. Regardless, very happy for Lins to go out there and showcase that style. I had thought he would use more of his grappling, more of his clinch game, but mixing in those calf kicks is always a very solid game plan, especially if you're going up against a power puncher who relies on that explosivity to try to get their finishes. So great veteran performance from Philippe Lins. Let's check out the odds that cashed. He cashes as the underdog, like I said, plus 115, by decision plus 600. I was very hot on that throughout the week too, so very happy to cash on that as well. And then the over 1.5 at plus 125. Philippe Lins is rolling now. Let's see if he can keep it consistent, stay active, and start working up these light heavyweight rankings. In what was his best UFC performance to date, Kyler Phillips sweeps the scorecards and defeats number 13, Pedro Munos, and he looked damn good doing so. Now, the big knock on Kyler Phillips coming into this matchup was how he was going to deal with the constant forward pressure and the insane durability that Pedro Munos puts on the table. And we saw that durability fully on display as Phillips was landing a ridiculous combination after ridiculous combination on Munos, and Munos didn't really care. He continued to walk through it, didn't show any signs of slowing down, any signs of getting dropped or hurt very badly. But Phillips did a great job in terms of managing his gas tank and showcasing that he can go a full 15 minutes by putting on a very solid striking performance. He managed his gas tank very well in terms of throwing heat when he needed to, riding the cage when he needed to, but also picking and choosing his moments in terms of when to throw his shots. And the big part of his success was also the speed in which he was throwing, because everything that he was throwing was pretty much landing, especially down the pipe, and then especially when he was throwing in combinations and landing those head kicks over the top. It was a very phenomenal performance from Kyler Phillips. I know a lot of people were fading him going into this matchup. I picked him to win this fight, but I wasn't so confident to bet on him in this spot. But it was a great performance for him overall. Now he's in the rankings, and now things really start picking up, and let's see how far he can take it. All right, let's check out the odds that cash here. Phillips, the favorite, cashing at minus 220 by decision minus 120, and then the over 2.5 cashing at minus 310. Munos has been fighting all comers, credit to him, but he's not been doing so hot as of late. Had that win over Chris Gutierrez a couple fights back. But now taking another defeat here to Kyler Phillips. Curious to see how the UFC decides to match him up moving forward and how they will match Kyler Phillips moving forward. 229-28 and 130-27, and Matthias Gamrat goes out there and defeats former lightweight champion Rafael Dos Anjos on the scorecards. That was a very solid performance for Gamrat after having a tough start. Dos Anjos was able to hurt him early, had some good success keeping Gamrat off of him, but halfway through that first round, Gamrat was able to close in, land the takedown, land some big shots from that top position, and then continue to do so over the second and third rounds. Not with as much damage and dominance as he showcased at the ending of the first round, but he was able to muzzle the former champion, and he was able to keep him in bad positions, nullifying the amount of big shots that Dos Anjos was able to land, allowing Gamrat to go out there and win it, like I said, on the scorecards. That's a very tough and solid win for Gamrat, who's trying to build some momentum and get back to fighting, being in title contention. This is a guy that has a win over Arman Tsarukyan, a guy that's deserving of a, number one contender fight, which is absolutely possible. We got Tsarukyan and Oliveira fighting next month, I believe, at UFC 300. So maybe him fighting the loser of that matchup would be the best way to go. I believe Makhachev should fight the winner of that matchup, and then hopefully the winner, if Gamrat's able to get another dub, he possibly fights for the title at the end of the year or early next year. But great work all around for Gamrat, showcasing that he's still a high-level opponent. I know a lot of people were not so hot on his super chalky line here, trying to seek the value on Dos Anjos, and it seemed a little solid at the beginning of the fight, but I think the best way to have approached it was to take the decision prop on Gamrat, considering that was his best path to victory, and Dos Anjos is normally a very tough customer to put away. So speaking of the decision prop, let's look at the odds that cash here. Gamrat, like I said, heavy favorite, minus 430 comes through by decision, minus 155, which again, that was his most likely path to victory. I would rather have latched myself to that than the minus 430. And then the over 2.5, a lot of people expected this to go to the scorecards, comes in at minus 320. Very unfortunate loss here for Dos Anjos, who's coming close to his 40th birthday. This is a guy that showcased that he can still be somewhat competitive, but maybe fighting the top 10 guys is not in his cards for the rest of his career. But I would still like to see him back and give another maybe up-and-coming prospect an opportunity to see if they deserve to have a ranking beside their name or if they should be able to enter the top 10. But tonight was Gamrat's night as he picks up the unanimous decision victory. Maycee Barber comes out victorious with a unanimous decision victory over Katlyn Sermonara. There were 230-27s on the scorecards as well as 129-28. And you can see with Sermonara, she was struggling to figure out how to get into that fight. She wanted to start with a grapple-heavy approach, but did not come to fruition as we saw Barber's physicality come into play there. And then in the second round, we saw Sermonara do some good work with her long-range striking, but for some reason decided to engage in the clinch again, where she clearly did not have the striking or the strength advantage, which is clearly what was in Barber's realm there. To me, it was very unfortunate considering that we know that Sermonara was having solid success from range. If she had plenty of opportunities to break back out into distance, but for some reason felt like she wanted to engage in the clinch and try to get her wrestling going. It seemed like she worked a lot on the wrestling this training camp, thinking that she'd be able to get Barber to the ground, similar to what Andrea Lee was able to do against Barber a couple fights back, but that did not come to fruition. Barber is very strong in the clinch, and she showcased that once again this evening. So as a Sermonara backer, it was very discouraging to see Sermonara continuously engage in the clinch when she was having so much success from range, where she normally does her best work. 1-2s down the pipe, front kicks up the middle, maintain her range, utilize a lot of footwork. She showed great takedown defense and good get-ups, but the fact that she just kept engaging in the clinch was a head scratcher for sure. I think Sermonara is going to be very upset with herself when she goes back to the drawing board to see, she could have won that fight had she had gone back to the bread and butter. She saw what was succeeding for her in the beginning of the second round, but she was unable to do that for the remainder of the fight to end up winning that fight. But credit to Maycee Barber going out there, knowing that she was stronger in the clinch and she was willing to engage there. She was clearly the one landing the better strikes, and now she finds herself on a pretty long winning streak now. John Anik talked about a possible fight night main event in the future for Barber. I don't know if a lot of people want to see that at this point in time. Maybe another win. Sermonaro was a big time victory for her, but let's see her fight somebody else. I don't know if a fight night main event is what we really want to see at this point in time for Barber. All right, let's check out the odds that cash here. Barber money line minus 190 comes through by decision plus 110, and then the over 2.5 at minus 370. Pretty straightforward fight there. Again, Sermonar's really going to be kicking herself after seeing her performance and seeing what she could have done better. Credit to Barber for taking advantage of what Sermonar was giving to her, especially in the clinch, and taking advantage of that. All right, good one for Barber. Let's see how this prelim headliner goes between heavyweights Curtis Blades and Jailton Almeida. The first round was a complete domination for Jailton Almeida as he took down Curtis Blades at will. I believe it was 9 total takedowns that he was able to secure. But in that second round, we saw him a little bit hesitant to close the distance. Once he did, we saw Blades unleash some nasty hammer fists while defending the takedown, and it ultimately hurt Almeida, putting him out, allowing Blades to win this fight via second round TKO. There was a tremendous amount of action coming in on Almeida throughout fight week, which pushed Blades from a roughly minus 125 favorite down to a plus 110 favorite or underdog. Some people were even able to snatch up plus 120 in certain spots. But Blades showcased that he is still a top heavyweight that people need to respect and remember as a very solid guy to go out there and win the title on any given night. It's mainly been guys that are able to put him out with one shot that have given him trouble in the past. Almeida has never really been that guy. He's been really focusing on grapple-heavy approaches throughout his career. And even though he had tremendous success in that first round, he showcased that if he's not able to secure that takedown, things could get a little bit shaky for him. And Blades was able to extremely expose that there. Good win for Blades. Very feel-good moment for him as well, considering he is a guy that's always been the bridesmaid to the UFC heavyweight champion, a guy that deserves a heavyweight title shot on numerous occasions, but ultimately keeps running up against the Francis Ngannou's, Derek Lewis's, and the Sergey Pavlovich's of the world. I thought it was a great call-out that he had in the post-fight interview. But let's quickly talk about the odds that cashed here before we talk about the post-fight interview. Blades cashing as the underdog, closing as the underdog at plus 110. Solid work there. By knockout plus 250. Round 2 plus 850. Round 2 knockout plus 950. And the under 1.5 cashing at plus 125. So like I was saying, Curtis Blades called out Tom Aspinall in the post-fight interview there. And if a lot of people remember, I believe it was 2 years ago at this point where Tom Aspinall and Curtis Blades threw down in a UFC London main event that only lasted less than 20 seconds as Aspinall injured his knee and Blades got his hand raised by TKO that night. But that is surely a fight that a lot of people would like to see run back. Aspinall obviously holds the interim heavyweight title right now. Undisputed champion John Jones is still keen on fighting Stipe Miocic, which probably won't go down until September or November. So I wouldn't mind an interim heavyweight title fight between Blades and Aspinall just to cover a little bit of that time to keep Aspinall busy and try to get him back into the swing of things and maybe even allow Blades to finally strap some gold around his waist, albeit interim, to finally fight for the heavyweight title early next year. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. This was a great performance from Blades. Well, maybe not so much the first round. It's credit to him in terms of consistently getting back to his feet, constantly trying to fight the hands. Anytime Almeida was trying to sink the hooks in to try to go for a rear naked choke of any sort, Blades was privy to it, was fighting the hands, was fighting the hooks, working back to his feet, staying calm, staying disciplined, and then eventually lashing out in that second round and getting that TKO win. So maybe not the greatest performance, but good defense and then good killer instinct in that second round for him to get his hand raised. Curtis Blades, second round TKO over Jailton Almeida, and that takes us to our stacked main event, which I cannot wait for. Now that was high-level fighting, but it was ultimately Petr Yan who was able to successfully snap his 3-fight losing streak and pick up a dominant victory over Song Yadong, winning rounds 2 and 3 and winning it by decision. The first round was pretty close with Song very energetic, very powerful, landing a few takedowns, landing some big shots, and making it look like he was going to start to take over that fight, but he started to slow down a little bit. It seemed like the high activity of that fight favored Petr Yan, a guy who is known to go out there and have high-level fights high octane fights, especially over 25 minutes. So to have it to do it for only 15 minutes, I'm sure he was happy, and even happier when he saw that Song was starting to slow down, concede positions, and that was allowing Jan to pretty much get off on what he wanted to do. There seemed like there was a little bit of life left in Song at the beginning of the third round, but as we start to get into deeper waters of the 14, 15 minute, that's where we saw Jan's championship medal come into play and him really start to take over, landing the takedown and grinding out from that top position. It's a bittersweet spot. I obviously predicted Song to win that fight. I thought the slow starting of Jan, which was evident once again here, would hinder him too much for the first maybe 7 or 8 minutes, which would favor Song in the early going and hopefully be enough for him to win the first 2 rounds. But it seemed like that Jan uptick came a little bit sooner than I was expecting it to, and it was a great, a bittersweet win in my perspective, as I'm a big Petr Yan fan. So very happy to see him go out there and snap this losing streak. Hopefully get back into title contention. Maybe fight the loser of this weekend's card. That would be a great next fight for him. Whether it's a rematch with Sean O'Malley from a very highly controversial split decision loss, or a fresh matchup against Marlon Vera, which is a very fun fight. A fight where both guys start off very slow and then pick up their pace in the deeper waters. It'll be interesting to see who would be able to come out on top if that matchup ends up getting put together. Good learning lesson for Song Yadong. High level of opponent here. Obviously, I believe it was number 4 against number 7. Regardless, this is a good learning experience for the youngster. Song, high level opponent, former champion. This will only make him stronger, and I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing Jan versus Song again in the future. Song just has to get notched down a couple pegs now, but I'm sure he'll be back in this higher level soon enough. All right, let's check out the odds that cashed here. Jan money line comes through at -145, by decision +130, and then the over 2.5 cashes at -280. Wild that the over was so chalky, but more often than not, these guys do end up going in their scorecards. It's crazy when you see how heavy they throw as well, that they don't produce the finishes that you would expect them to produce. But the over does come through there, like I said, at -280. Good win for Jan. I'm glad that he's gotten that monkey off his back now. Let's see what they match him up with next. 2 judges had Gilbert Burns up on the cards going into that third round, and he was a minute and a half away from giving Jack Della Maddalena the first loss of his UFC career. But Maddalena knew that he should have came on strong in that final round, and that's what exactly he was able to do, stopping the majority of success that Burns was trying to get with the grappling and the takedowns. Showcasing Maddalena was clearly working on his submission defense, grappling defense, and his ability to get out of that bad spot and put the pressure on Burns, landing that beautiful knee to finally get that third round stoppage and keeping that undefeated UFC record intact. Jack Della Maddalena is an absolute monster, and even more of a monster considering the name that he called out in the post-fight interview. We'll talk about that really shortly. Let me get to the odds that cashed first and foremost. Maddalena -160 comes through as the favorite by knockout +160. Round 3 +950. Round 3 knockout +1000. Over 2.5 +130. Shout out to anybody that took the fight doesn't go to decision instead of the under, because we're in that weird territory where the over cashes, but the fight doesn't go to decision cashes as well. It was a solid performance from Maddalena, in my opinion. Even though he was down on the scorecards, he nullified most of the threat of the grappling from Burns. And I thought if he just put a little bit more pop on his shots in the first and second round, he probably could have come away with, at least winning one of those first 2 rounds. One of the judges did give it to him. But 2 of the other judges, like I said, saw it in Burns' favor. But I broke it down pretty much to a T this entire week, knowing that Maddalena was going to cause Burns to work, and this fight would leak into the third round, and that's the point where Maddalena was going to be able to snipe him and get him out of there. Burns has a questionable gas tank, especially when he's unable to secure that top position. We've seen it in past fights. The Wonderboy Thompson fight, he starts slowing down, reverts to his grappling, and luckily for him, Wonderboy just didn't have the grappling to keep that fight upright. Same with Jorge Masvidal. I would have loved to have seen that fight go down when Masvidal was closer to his peak. Masvidal probably would have come out on top. But Burns is an overachiever in this welterweight division, in my opinion. He's a solid fighter, improving striking, high-level BJJ black belt. But if he can't get that wrestling going, things will go south for him pretty quickly, just as we saw here with Jack Della Maddalena. Now let's quickly talk about Maddalena and the opponent he called out, Shavkat Rakhmonov. Nobody calls out Shavkat, especially given the mic time that Jack was given. That was the perfect call out for him. Both of these guys are on the cusp of a title shot. Maddalena just defeated number 4. I'm not sure where Shavkat is currently ranked, but I'm sure he's somewhere in that top 6. If those two guys threw down right now, that would be the perfect way to position this welterweight division going forward. Give Bilal Muhammad the title shot. The goddamn guy deserves a title shot. So we got the title fight set there with Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad. Again, it's not officially set, but that should be what's next. And then clearly Rakhmonov versus Jack Della Maddalena. Fuck it. Make it a 5-round co-main event on the same card of Edwards and Bilal, just in case somebody gets injured as well. They have a backup available, and having them train for 5 rounds, even better in my opinion. So, great performance from Jack, especially late, showcasing some defensive grappling improvements. He's going to have to showcase that even more against a guy like Rakhmonov if that's the fight they end up putting together. But still, very happy to see Maddalena go out there and get the dub. There we go. Maddalena by 3rd round knockout over Gilbert Burns. It was a successful UFC debut for Michael Venom Page as he goes out there and outstrikes Kevin Holland in the 1st and 3rd round. Even though Kevin Holland got some decent control time in the 2nd round, I thought the damage that Page was able to dish out kind of outdid whatever Kevin Holland was able to do. Although now that I'm thinking about it, I think Holland did land some damage from that top position when he was able to secure it. But credit to Michael Venom Page for working out of that bad spot, not allowing Kevin Holland to establish even more damage or even a potential submission to get the win. But it was Page who was able to stop the takedowns, stay at range, and do what he does best and put an absolute beating on Kevin Holland. It seemed like he hurt him multiple times and a knockout was close to coming to fruition, but Holland's durability showed off once again, and we saw Page just really feel at home inside the octagon, which is something that was very nice to see. Page has been talked about for years, and obviously he had a decent career over there in Bellator, never really touched gold. I doubt he'll touch gold in the UFC as well, considering the amount of wrestlers that we have at the top of the division. But great showing from Page. I hope that they continue to match him up with other strikers that could give us some more Michael Venom Page type performances. I know a lot of people are going to be leaning on the wrestlers, whoever they match him up with, and that's what people thought Kevin Holland was going to be able to do here. A lot of people breaking down this fight, they're like, hey, if Kevin Holland grappled against Wonderboy Thompson, he might have been successful, but we're skipping a step. How do you get the grappling going? You get it with the wrestling, and Kevin Holland's wrestling has never been that great. MVP has trained his entire MMA career pretty much in preparation for guys that are looking to take him to the mat, and he has done a decent job throughout his career in terms of staying upright. The most recent wrestler to defeat him was Logan Storley, and even that was by split decision in a fight where Storley was struggling to maintain that top position as MVP was landing the bigger, better shots. So it's not just a foregone conclusion that if you match him up with a wrestler that MVP is going to go to the ground and be, kind of useless from there. But I think that there are better wrestlers in the UFC that could cause MVP issues on the ground. I just hope that they don't do that. Give MVP more strikers. The guy that I was thinking, Wonderboy Thompson, that's a phenomenal matchup. Both guys coming from kickboxing backgrounds. Both guys were, kind of in the same stage of their career where they're kind of on the downside, even though MVP's coming off of a win right now. He's up there in age. He's not going to contend for a title, in my opinion. Just put him in fun fights. And Wonderboy Thompson would be a fun fight. I don't see why they don't do that. Yeah, that should be what's next. Quickly touching on Kevin Holland. Unfortunate loss for him here. Credit to him in terms of fighting any and everybody that the UFC throws at him. And again, solid striker, but you can see when somebody is technically better than him in a certain aspect of MMA, he usually falls up short. Striking, grappling, whatever it is. He's good against those guys that are in the middle tier that, aren't exceptional at striking or aren't exceptional at wrestling. But otherwise, when he fights expertise or guys that are having expertise in certain situations in MMA, he usually ends up coming up short. All right, let's check out the odds that cash here. Michael Page, underdog, happy to hit that, plus 110, by decision, plus 220, over 2.5, minus 180. I was really hoping that Page would be able to secure that knockout. Again, seemed like it was going to come to fruition a couple times. He hurt Holland very badly a couple times. It seemed like if MVP followed up with a couple more shots rather than just clinching whenever they would crash the pocket, he probably could have found the finish. But regardless, great performance from Michael Venom Page in his UFC debut. Let's do the Wonderboy Thompson fight next, why don't we? After a very tough first round and seeming to be slowing down, Dustin Poirier digs deep, showcases his veteran experience, and knocks out the hungry lion Benoit Saint-Denis in the second round. As most people expected in the first round, Saint-Denis was very aggressive, taking Poirier to the ground, getting some dominant positions, but unable to get the finish. But it was in the second round where he got some better spots as well, especially with Poirier helping him, jumping guillotine as Poirier is known to do, but Poirier eventually getting back to the feet and getting to his striking, which is clearly where he had the advantage. A very wild and unfortunate ending for Saint-Denis, who decided to strike a little bit more than he should have, leaving the opening for Poirier to get him out of there. Big credit for Dustin Poirier for one, taking this fight that a lot of people, even himself, have said he probably should not have taken, and still going out there and getting the W. Big win for him, asserting himself still at the top of the lightweight division, not just beating the veterans and the legacy fights, but still going out there and showcasing that can keep his crown at the top of the game. Big win for him. All right, let's check out the odds that cashed here. Poirier moneyline plus 180, by knockout plus 370, round 2 plus 1300, round 2 knockout plus 1600, and the over 1.5 cashes by 2 seconds. And that comes in at minus 210. I'm still bewildered over here, as I really expected Benoit to be able to assert his dominance. It seemed like the shortcomings that he had in the striking realm eventually came back to bite him in the ass. I was pretty heavy on Saint-Denis this week, and I'll be honest about that. But again, another bittersweet spot here where we see Poirier bounce back from that knockout loss that he took to Justin Gaethje mid last year, and then going out there and doing it against a guy, like I said, like Benoit Saint-Denis. Very, very impressive. Shout out to Dustin Poirier for getting the dub there. Bittersweet for your boy. Bring on the main event. My God, what is Marlon Vera's chin made of? Sean O'Malley hit him with so many clean shots, not to mention that knee in the second round. I believe it was the second or third round, that you could hear from all around the arena pretty much. Sounded like a baseball bat hitting somebody's face pretty much. That was as clean as you could possibly land a knee, and credit to Vera for sticking it out the entire time. Even hurt O'Malley in the last second of that fight with the shot to the pretty much the solar plexus. It seemed like O'Malley even credited him for that too. So you got to wonder if Vera kind of put his foot on the gas a little bit earlier, how things could have shook out for him. But the big question mark going into this matchup was O'Malley going to be able to keep this up for 25 minutes? We know Vera is a guy that starts to come on hot late, but he seemed to be unable to get started considering the wizardry in the striking realm from Sean O'Malley. O'Malley did a great job in terms of staying active enough, giving him all these feints, stance twitches, and just all these different looks, changing up his combinations, never really throwing the same thing so closely together. So it kept Vera thinking about what was coming back his way. And the accuracy in which he was hitting him was just so clean, so tough to deal with for Vera, and Vera had no answer for it. He had some glimpses, but they were, 5-second bursts of success, and then after that, O'Malley just managed to rally back and get everything back into his favor, throwing output, keeping Vera on the back foot. It was a thing of beauty, honestly. Vera continues to keep his, ability to not get knocked out intact. I don't think O'Malley recorded a knockdown of sort. There was that time where it seemed like he got Vera to drop on a knee, but Vera was back up pretty quickly. So I'm not sure if they counted that as an actual knockdown. But yeah, shout out to O'Malley, kept it within himself, stayed on the target. It seemed like he was trying to go for the kill, so we have to credit him for that. But his ability to go 25 minutes, get that championship experience, and still manage to pull out the victory over a very tough and dangerous Marlon Vera. very good work for him there. All right, let's talk about the odds that cash real quick before we talk about the back end here. O'Malley, the favorite, obviously coming through at minus 255 cashes. By decision, plus 130. That was the underdog shot here. And then over 4.5 at minus 150 comes through as well. Again, a lot of people expected if O'Malley were to win, it would come by knockout. But that's a tough task, especially when you're trying to do it against a guy in Marlon Vera who seems to have the greatest chin that we've ever seen in mixed martial arts. You know, tops Roy Nelson's chin, tops any of the chins that we've seen in the past. Roy Nelson is the only one that really comes to mind. Mark Hunt had a legendary chin as well for a long time. But yeah, Marlon Vera's chin, absolutely insane. All right, O'Malley goes out there and calls out Ilia Topuria. We knew he was going to do this. We knew that he's going to try to duck the bantamweight contenders that are there in droves. Most importantly, Merab Dvalishvili, who Dana White pretty much says this guy is the one that should get the title shot next. They're going to have to likely pay O'Malley a bunch of money, even more for him to accept that fight. You know, I hope Merab doesn't get put on the back burner like Bilal Muhammad seems to be for the welterweight division. But, you know, O'Malley has way more pull than Leon Edwards, that's for sure. It would be a travesty to the integrity of the sport if Merab Dvalishvili does not get the next title shot. We know him and Topuria are going to be calling for it. We know there might be a Spain show sometime in October. It would be a pay-per-view. O'Malley versus Topuria there, maybe, but both guys have legitimate contenders to go up against still. Whether you give Volkanovski the immediate rematch, which I don't think should be next, but there's plenty of other featherweights that could go up there. And then obviously for the bantamweight division, endless contenders there still. Let's see O'Malley fight Merab next. Fingers crossed that's what actually ends up happening. All right, let's put a bow on this podcast here, the show. There were 4 knockouts, 1 submission, and 9 decisions through this 14-fight card. 9 of the 5 favorites end up winning on the night. Some underdogs barking, just like the co-main event in Dustin Poirier. And then performer of the night, I gotta go with Sean O'Malley. I originally had MVP listed in there, obviously a very spectacular UFC debut for him, going out there showcasing some decent takedown defense and get-ups, and then just being able to flow effortlessly and absolutely touching up Kevin Holland over the course of 15 minutes. But what Sean O'Malley was able to do against a guy in Marlon Vera who never been knocked out, obviously didn't knock him out here, but to be able to keep that persistent pace over 25 minutes, absolutely maul him on the feet, land shots that would crumple any other human being, you got to give the performer of the night to Sean O'Malley. Big win for him there. Big work. But please go out there and fight Merab Dvalishvili next. That is the clear number 1 contender. That's what's got to happen next. All right. There you guys go. Immediate reactions for UFC 299. It is right now 1:35 a.m. Eastern. I'm going to try to get this out ASAP for you guys. Appreciate all the love and support. I will see you guys on Monday as we get back to regularly scheduled programming for UFC Vegas 87 or 88, I believe, is next up. I'll see you guys then. Peace.